Greetings. Today's video I want to cover self-defense and specifically the dangerous arguments that were put forward in the Rittenhouse trial. As an individual who works in the security industry, my actions are governed and controlled very heavily by the self-defense law. I do not intend for this video to argue about any issue of the Rittenhouse case other than those that are of immediate concern to self-defense. The prosecution's arguments during this case put forward a premise that could easily undermine or have undermined self-defense for individuals and for those who work within private security, had they been accepted.
We also agree that no one person's life is more valuable than another. You don't get to kill someone simply because they're a drug dealer. You don't weigh a pastor's life over a teacher's life. You don't weigh a police officer's life over an engineer's life. All life is sacred.
To this point, there's no argument. All life is sacred. No one disagrees with this.
Source or Ultimate Gas or other businesses, and many of them were armed with AR-15s, just like the defendant. In fact, you're going to see a video, and you've already seen it, of a clash between people with AR-15s at Ultimate Gas and other folks that are, I guess, protesters, and there's people getting in people's faces, there's yelling, there's shouting, there's even shoving. And yet, in this entire sequence of events, from the shooting of Jacob Blake on Sunday, August 23rd, 2020, all the way after that, everything this community went through, the only person who shot and killed anyone was the defendant.
This statement and premise ignores so many factors of the case. Yes, other individuals were there that were armed. Yes, there were confrontations. But not a single one of those confrontations escalated to a point in which someone was being chased by an individual who intended to harm them, who had made statements of intending to harm. The use of force is solely governed by the incident and the specific details of the event. No, you cannot shoot someone just for disagreeing with you. No, you cannot even punch them for disagreeing with you. Everyone there who was armed presumably understood that. From the video evidence, even Kyle understood that. That is why, on video, he is seen only shooting when he has determined that his escape has been cut off and there is no other option to prevent his rifle from being taken, him being shot, or him being physically assaulted.
FBI video, when Mr. Rosenbaum starts to run, the defendant starts to run as well, at the same time, as if he's pursuing him. Mr. Rosenbaum could not have possibly have known the defendant is behind him. There's no indication in this record that he knew the defendant was there. It's not an ambush. It's not a situation where he goes there and lays in wait for the defendant. The defendant arrives at that location, and you hear him yell, "Friendly, friendly, friendly," because he's aware of the fact that the people that he's about to confront are hostile to him.
This statement regarding knowing the crowd is hostile and yet yelling "friendly, friendly, friendly," I cannot put into words how aggravatedly disgusted this makes me. This shows that an argument being made is devoid of any understanding of the premise at which that term is even used. If you are unfamiliar with the usage of the term "friendly, friendly, friendly" in a situation like this, let me provide you some background. If you are familiar with it, please bear with this. Individuals do not yell "friendly, friendly, friendly" to a hostile entity. In the military, we do not come forward to a group going friendly, friendly, friendly if we know they are hostile. Because it's clearly we are not friendly to them. They are not friendly to us. The term friendly, friendly, friendly is considered a verbal FOF ID, friend or foe. You are identifying yourself as you are on their side. At what point would anyone in their right mind come forward to a hostile entity going friendly, friendly, friendly?
And this is the middle portion of that incident. And you can see Mr. Rosenbaum chasing after the defendant, throwing that plastic bag, and then the defendant turns and points the gun back at Mr. Rosenbaum. And this is the moment in time when Mr. Rosenbaum essentially does sort of a little hop with both of his hands in the air. And the defendant has testified. He saw at that moment that there was nothing in the defendant's hand, or in Mr. Rosenbaum's hands. He was unarmed. There's the defendant turning and pointing the gun. Mr. Rosenbaum leaps, his hands out to the air, and then watch here at the end. This is where the shooting occurs. Mr. Rosenbaum is not even within arm's reach when the first shot occurs. I'll play that again. The defendant is pointing the gun at Mr. Rosenbaum. Mr. Rosenbaum raises his arms off to the side. The defendant approaches these cars and slows down.
I'm going to leave this clip up while I discuss this, because this is a danger of discussing self-defense and the use of force with an unknowledgeable individual. Use of force in self-defense is allowed to ensure safety to whatever extent is needed. Deadly force requires a significant belief of bodily harm or death. In this clip, you see Kyle running, you see Rosenbaum chasing. You do see Kyle Rittenhouse turn around and point the firearm towards Rosenbaum, but does not fire. This is critical, and it is to his benefit for self-defense. And it is in keeping with the law of self-defense. Wisconsin law self-defense states that a person is privileged to threaten or intentionally use force against another person for the purpose of preventing or terminating what that person reasonably believes to be an unlawful interference with his or her person by such other person. The prosecution even states that Rosenbaum is chasing Rittenhouse. Kyle turns around and points the firearm to Rosenbaum in an attempt to use escalational force. Shout, show, shove, shoot. He's already done shout. Friendly, friendly, friendly. Show. Pointing the weapon at Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum does not accept this and does not de-escalate and back away. He continues to charge. It can be assumed. I do not know for sure. I can only look at the video. Being a practitioner of security, Rittenhouse is completely correct for not shooting. Rosenbaum is too far away at the time. The show is the only use of force he's allowed to do. There are individuals on the other side of Rosenbaum. You could potentially be endangering their safety. Rittenhouse makes the correct judgment. Continue to flee. What we see, though, is when he gets to the cars, He is forced to slow down because there's no clear path through the vehicles. Rosenbaum is catching up. This pause is about the moment he begins to fire. If we look at it close enough, they are about the width of that vehicle apart. 6 feet, roughly. Prosecution says he's 4 feet away from the barrel of the gun. That puts it about 6 feet from from Rittenhouse. To anyone in security, that is a dangerous situation. You have minimal moments to react at that point. He is one and a half steps from being on top of you. You have to make a decision. There are people on the other side of the vehicles. Rittenhouse does not know what their intentions are, what their understanding of the situation is. Rosenbaum has closed the distance to within 6 feet. With vehicles around, that is a lot of glass. Kyle cannot be sure he can properly fight Rosenbaum. As most people, I would like to believe, know, specifically anyone who works in security knows, size does not matter. There are people who are 5'3" who can take someone who is 6'8", 6'10", 7 feet. Because size does not matter. It is ability. Kyle does not know what Rosenbaum is capable of. Kyle, as far as I know, is not trained in self-defense. He is also younger than Rosenbaum. He is still developing muscles. Rosenbaum is a full-grown adult. His muscles are fully developed. Even if he does not go to the gym, he has the capacity to do great bodily harm. Plus, being surrounded by cars, there are plenty of weapons of opportunity. Indirectly. If he overpowers Rittenhouse, he could potentially put Rittenhouse's head through one of the windows, cut him using the shards of glass. Once the glass is broken, could pop open that door, put his head in between, and smash it. Possible? Yes. Likely? Hard to say. Because it did not happen. These are possibilities. They are considerations to take into account. But at 6 feet, the width of a car length, you have no time to react. As the prosecution even admits, all 4 shots are fired within less than a second. They state 0.76 of a second.
Dr. Kelly has testified that the first shot that the defendant fired at Joseph Rosenbaum hit the victim in the right pelvis, fracturing it. Mr. Rosenbaum was incapacitated at that point.
This statement takes so much into assumption. It is ridiculous. As I've stated on the previous clip, 4 shots in 0.76 seconds. I do not expect anyone to be capable of realizing that within that amount of time, that the very first round had incapacitated an individual attacking them at less than 6 feet. Even in security, we would never assume that they were incapacitated. Even in security, no one would ever make that assumption because there are too many variables. And our brains simply would not process that Our brains would simply not process that factor before even the fourth shot left the barrel in 0.76 seconds. By the time the fourth round fired, we may then just now be realizing. But at less than 6 feet, we do not have the time. No one has the time to make that judgment call.
He is, whatever threat he might have posed, it's over. There is no further threat. He is falling to the ground, and the defendant doesn't stop after that.
While it is true that he falls to the ground, he falls forward. To somehow magically understand that the very first round shattered his pelvis and that his forward momentum is taking him to the ground because of that, and not because he is still lunging to grab the rifle, to grab a hold of Rittenhouse's torso, to tackle him to the ground, is beyond a ridiculous assumption in less than a second. At that distance, there's no way to know if that round shattered the pelvis, hit below the pelvis, or hit above the pelvis. At the distance and the time in which this incident occurred, there is no way to have the focus on the specific very first round that was fired, to watch it go towards the pelvic girdle, knowing that how it impacted into the body didn't pass through high or low of the pelvic, but instead managed to shatter the bones, causing the forward momentum to be an incapacitation momentum, not a lunging. This is a ridiculous argument and a dangerous argument. Because if someone in the future was ever to take this argument under their standing, and they had put in a similar situation by someone, and they assumed that their first shot towards the lower torso was one that would incapacitate the pelvic girdle, but they failed to, and then they were injured, and then they were killed in the military, in the police, and in security. If you are an armed security guard in the self-defense situation, you are told and you are trained to fire until the threat is at a perceivable state of ended. That does not mean that you fire once and wait. That means you fire until you know for a fact, through visual confirmation, that the individual is no longer a threat. Maybe it takes one round, if you're lucky. That is extreme luck. Maybe it takes two. Maybe it takes the entire magazine. But until you can say for certain that the threat is stopped, you continue to do what must be done.
Mr. Rosenbaum's hand was most likely turned in this position, palms outward with his thumb to the ground, when the bullet goes through the area in between his middle finger and his ring finger and penetrates the lower knuckle of the middle finger and the index finger before exiting. Dr. Kelly testified there's soot in that area, suggesting that the hand was close to the end of the defendant's barrel of the AR-15 at the time of that shot. The defense wants you to believe it's there because Mr. Rosenbaum is deliberately reaching for the gun.
This is a positive method of grabbing a firearm barrel. I do not condone, nor do I recommend, ever grabbing the barrel of a gun in such a manner, due to the fact that they generate heat when they are fired. You're going to burn your hand. However, in a situation where you need to take control of a firearm, and your only method is to grab a barrel to gain control of it, You do not grab thumb up. That does not give you strong positive control, and it keeps the barrel pointed center in mass. You grab thumb down so that when you grab it, you can push it across your body, moving yourself out of the line of fire. That is the only thing I can assume by this attempt of Rosenbaum, that he was attempting to grab the barrel to gain a positive control while moving out of its line of fire.
By pulling the trigger fast. He could have chosen to stop after the first shot, after the second shot, after the third shot, and assessed whether or not there was still a need to keep firing. But he went 4 times in 0.76 seconds. The defense has made a big point of this.
I ask anyone who watches this video to test themselves. Let's make an assumption to see if you can recognize how fast 0.76 seconds is. Test yourself however you want. I would argue that this statement is by far the most dangerous suggestion that was presented in this case. To tell anyone that if someone is within 6 feet of them and you reasonably believe that they intend to harm you, to fire a single round and then assess what happens, you will be dead before you realize it. The area in which a person can be incapacitated with a single round within seconds is small. The area in which a single round can kill is much larger. But that larger area requires time, often including up to minutes. And minutes matter. Because at a distance of 6 feet, if that shot is not an instantaneous incapacitation, those minutes that individual has is enough to get on top of you, to win the fight, and to end you.
This gun or shoot this gun at people to protect property. So if you're going to protect the car source building, how is this gun going to help with that? The defendant has admitted the gun was useless when he was going to treat people as a medic because it got in the way. He had to take it off and hand it to someone. So you can't use it as a medic. You can't use it to protect the building. So what's it there for? Well,
It is a true statement that yes, carrying a firearm does not benefit you in conducting first aid. However, firearm is not there for first aid. Corpsmen in the Navy who are attached to the Marine Corps elements, when they are on green side, they carry a firearm. In fact, they carry an M4 and they carry a pistol. Not to give first aid, not to give trauma care on the battlefield. They carry because it is still their right to defend themselves in that situation. Paramedics, whether for the fire department or private, often enough have a policy that they do not enter a scene unless that scene has been secured by police. Why is this the case? This is because they do not have a means to defend themselves if they are attacked while conducting their job. Firearm is not there to give first aid. The firearm is not there to protect the business. The firearm is there to protect the individual if the situation escalates beyond what was intended. That is true in this case. That is true for any situation in which a security individual is carrying. In my position, I am not allowed to shoot someone because they are attacking the property I'm defending, nor would I. I am allowed to ask them to leave. I'm allowed to ask them to stop. And if they refuse, I am allowed to attempt to conduct a citizen's arrest. If they fight me, which they are allowed to do, technically, I am allowed to use whatever force I am deeming necessary to enact that citizen's arrest within reason. This does not mean I can resort to tasing them. This does not mean I can resort to shooting them. I can simply fight them, attempt to put them in handcuffs. If they attempt to flee, I am not allowed to shoot them. I am not allowed to tase them. I am only allowed to attempt to chase them up to the edge of our property. If they escape from me, it is then my ability to call law enforcement. That is the end of my ability. However, if, in the case of me attempting to conduct a citizen's arrest on someone trespassing on the property I'm there protecting as a security officer, and they attempt to fight me, they start throwing punches, they pull out a knife, they grab a chair and attempt to throw it at me, they aim for my head with it. At that point, I am no longer protecting the property. I am defending my life. I am defending my body and its ability to operate. At that point, it is no longer a citizen's arrest. This is a case of self-defense. This is what happened here. Rittenhouse was there for a presence at the car source to protect the property. The firearm was there in case people ignored that and attempted to attack him, as we have seen occur.
So, because that gun is normally locked in a safe that he doesn't have access to, and it's not even legally his. He's out after a citywide curfew. He's intentionally and knowingly entering into a dangerous situation, and he expects it because he brings along his AR-15 and some body armor. So don't tell me you didn't know. He brings along no non-lethal means of defense, which means his only option is to kill.
Let's talk non-lethal. So many individuals like to flaunt the concept of non-lethal protection. Pepper spray, tasers. Okay. There have been far too many cases in which non-lethal has become synonymous with ineffective. Ignoring the simple fact that one, Rittenhouse did not legally carry a taser, so that method is outside of his ability. Tasers are known to fail. Individuals have been known to be able to shrug off a taser, whether it be just body mass, faulty device, chemical adrenaline even. Tasers are not 100% guaranteed. Let's assume pepper spray was brought and it was used. Pepper spray is very useless in this situation. Pepper spray is only a deterrent to those who are not fully committed to their action. There is also no guarantee that the pepper spray would have been effective.
It simply cannot be reasonable for someone to be holding an AR-15 semi-automatic rifle with powerful ammunition and be chased by someone who is unarmed, who's smaller than him, who's shorter than him. And the first thing that you do to defend yourself is you plug 4 rounds into it. You shoot it from about 4 feet away, and not from 4 feet from Mr. Rittenhouse, 4 feet from the end of that gun. Your first shot immobilizes him. It shatters his hip. Then he's caused to go forward. And if you watch the videos, and we're going to watch a couple during this brief rebuttal, he crumples. He immediately crumples to the ground. No one is saying that Mr. Rosenbaum should have chased Mr. Rittenhouse. No one is saying that Mr. Rittenhouse did not have a right to defend himself. This case is about the right to use deadly force. And I want to talk about that standard because Attorney Richards, perhaps on accident, misstated it. He said that the standard is that it could cause death or great bodily harm to Mr. Rittenhouse, or that it is likely to cause death or great bodily harm to Mr. Rittenhouse. That is absolutely not what the standard is, and that is not what this trial is about. The standard is the defendant may intentionally use force which is intended or likely to cause death or great bodily harm, such as fire an AR-15, only if the defendant reasonably believed that the force used was necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm to himself. Not, oh, if you repeatedly smash someone's face, it might lead to injury. Not, oh, this could have happened. Imminent death or great bodily harm. There's an old phrase that I could kill you with my bare hands. And there is literally no evidence that Mr. Rosenbaum was capable of that. Mr. Rittenhouse has size on him. We heard how he's a swimmer. We heard how he's a lifeguard. He's apparently in some kind of shape. Punch him in the face. Kick him in the testicles. Knee him in the face. Hit him with your gun. You don't just immediately get to shoot someone. And I don't care about provocation or any of that. Put that aside. It is not reasonable for any adult, for any person, for any 17-year-old male to not try and defend yourself first using other methods. Now you factor in provocation, the fact he had no right to retreat, or no ability to, or he had to retreat, and that he had to exhaust all methods. Clearly, if there is provocation, he's guilty. But even outside of provocation, why do you get to immediately just start shooting? As Mr. Binger said, he brought a gun to a fist fight. And he was too cowardly to use his own fist to fight his way out. He has to start shooting. And
There's a lot to unpack in this clip. And many I've already discussed. The fact that this individual decides to argue, there's the old saying that I can kill you with my bare hands, and then attempts to say that there was no evidence that Rosenbaum was capable of this because he was smaller, he was shorter. It's ridiculous. Size does not guarantee ability. As a security officer, I deal with plenty of individuals of varying backgrounds, varying sizes, cross the gambit. I have taken down several individuals who have been a few inches taller than me. I'm already tall, but these individuals are taller, and they have been twice my weight before. I have had one individual who's likely near 3 times my weight and 2 to 3 inches taller. Does that mean I'm suddenly no longer capable of taking him on? Because Conor McGregor is only 5'8", does that mean he can no longer beat me? This is a ridiculous argument by an individual who does not have to worry about his own security. By an individual who's never had to deal with a situation of apprehending under a citizen's arrest or as law enforcement. This individual is making assumptions regarding an individual's capability solely on physique, which is the worst assumption you can ever make in a security, law enforcement, military environment, or even a self-defense environment. If these arguments had been accepted, it is my belief that the security industry, private and public, outside of law enforcement and military, would have come under grave attack of being outlawed. The arguments would have been stretched and construed that private security has now become a form of vigilantism. That private security carrying a firearm is illegal because there's no need for it. They're not protecting someone from grave bodily harm. They're just protecting them from paparazzi, from stalkers, from someone walking down the street shouting at obscenities at them. This was an attempt to make arguments that have dangerous consequences, whether they were knowledgeable of the fact of those or ignorant. Many people have seen through these. I'm not the only one. There are YouTubers who are far better than me who have pointed this out. My friends and I discuss this all the time. People I work with in security industry talk about this all the time. If you are unable to defend yourself, what's the point? If the ability to defend yourself was taken away because of these arguments, I know many people in the security industry that would leave. Because if they can't defend themselves, what's the point of defending something else or someone else? If they can't do their job safely or have the means of protecting themselves properly if a situation escalates, because both sides have a voice in the case. If I attempt to detain someone because they are breaking property at my job, they can try to fight back. I'm only conducting a citizen's arrest. They can attempt to escape. But the moment they start fighting with me, I have to do whatever it is in my abilities to stop it. I have to attempt to control them and to detain them. Now they can flee. Absolutely, they can flee. I have no ability to chase them. But the moment they start attacking me, I am now conducting self-defense. If I can't do that, how am I going to do my job? I'm going to leave this at that. I appreciate you for watching this far. If you enjoyed the video, please like. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I have a bunch of ideas I'm working on. I'm currently working on the video regarding the Geneva Conventions and the laws of war.